Hasan Piker just said the quiet part out loud. The internet exploded, liberals started cannibalizing each other, and somehow Asmongold spawned in as the final boss defender. Hasan is being called a secret Republican sleeper agent, a grifter, and the public enemy number one by the same crowd that used to worship him. He then fired back, Hasan went nuclear, and then Denims jumped in to somehow make everything worse. So here's what kicked off this entire political streamer controversy. On a podcast, Hasan was asked a pretty simple question: would he vote Democrat in a general election or not? And instead of doing the usual dodge, he said he'd rather vote third party and basically let Republican win. That's it. That one moment detonated leftist Twitter. Suddenly, the same people who defended him for years flipped instantly, accusing him of sabotaging elections, betraying marginalized groups, and secretly helping the ride.
I don't think that you should have the moral authority to tell someone that they're obligated to choose the lesser of two evils if they feel uncomfortable doing so.
And before you say, bro, it's just one streamer, let's be real for a second. Hasan has influence, real influence, not infinite power, not mind control, but enough sway that even a few percentage points matter in a two-party system.
And I think that he has every right to make a basically be a conscientious objector to an election and choose not to vote for those lesser of two evils.
Hasan's defense was publicly this: he claims no single person can decide an election, and if he really had that much power, politicians would be lining up to collab with him. But that argument falls apart instantly because elections don't need 100% swings, they need margins.
Sufficiently promote Kamala Harris.
But there's also this is the other truth, right? The two people, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, would probably still be alive right now if Kamala Harris was the president.
5% is enough. Even 1% can change outcomes, and the funniest part is that Hasan himself has bragged in the past about helping candidates win locally, so the sudden "I'm just a little guy" routine isn't landing. That contradiction is exactly why liberals snapped. From their perspective, Hasan takes people who are already leaning blue and convinces them to sit out, which does more damage than a right-wing streamer preaching to conservatives. That's why the backlash was vicious.
This is undeniable, and I think that you should acknowledge that whenever you say, if you're going to be making a principled voting decision, there will be consequences for that.
Ethan Klein stepped in and basically said Hasan isn't about harm reduction, he's about moral posturing while facing zero consequences himself.
And in not choosing the lesser of two evils, sometimes you end up getting the greater of those two evils. And again, but am I wrong about this?
Then Twitter turned into a war zone. Hasan started calling people libs, accusing them of obeying establishment politics and using marginalized communities as rhetorical shields while doing nothing, and that's where the hypocrisy accusations really hit.
You need long-term thinking. You do. But even if you having long-term thinking doesn't remove your accountability. Both things are true. You should say, yes, they died, that's bad, or whatever, but this is still where my principles are.
Hasan's entire brand is urgency, apocalypse rhetoric, fascism around every corner, end of the world framing, but when it's time to act, suddenly there's no rush. And then, because this timeline is cursed, Asmongold shows up as Hasan's only major defender. Yes, Asmongold, while everyone else was dunking, he took a more nuanced position, saying people have the right to refuse the lesser of two evils, but also acknowledging that choices have consequences. That part matters. You don't get to pretend outcomes don't exist just because your principles feel cleaner. That's where this entire debate lives. Ideals versus impact. Hasan wants minimum leverage without responsibility, and liberals want discipline without dissent. Both sides hate each other for it. Now, let's talk about Denims, the female Hasan. Old clips resurfaced of her criticizing Hasan years ago, which shocked absolutely nobody except her current audience. Instead of owning it cleanly, she went with the classic "people change" defense while selectively ignoring her own worst mistakes. That's where the internet smelled blood. She laughed off Hasan's past behavior as growth while treating other creators' old content as proof of permanent evil. That double standard is why people can't stand her. Things escalated further when Asmongold called her irrelevant after she went after Imiru, who is an apolitical creator tied to Asmon. Her response: accuse him of misogyny, claim he's mad because he's a man. The irony is brutal. She tried to prove he wasn't mad by explaining for several minutes how not mad he was. That's not a win. That's content for compilations. At this point, even people who hate Asmongold were like, yeah, she's doing too much. Stepping back, here's the bigger picture. Hasan's strategy only works if things get worse. That's the uncomfortable truth. When Republicans win, his content thrives, rage sells, outrage pays, and perpetual opposition keeps the money flowing. Watch this video next, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers!